Right now, I'm about to start a 2010 Yiwu Young puerh.
Mm-hmm.
So it should be pretty good. I was drinking a Liu Bao earlier because of the rain. Usually like to drink
Ah,
that. How about you? What are you going to be drinking?
we will drink 文山 baozhong from
Ooh,
Taipei. Yeah,
nice.
very light.
I haven't had too many Baozhongs before. I think I've only had Baozhong once.
Oh yeah, baozhong is just very light. So in the first few years, I didn't like it, but now
Mhm.
I start to understand this lightness. It's,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a big we're like going deep into tea technicalities. Maybe um, let's start with a quick. Um,
Mhm.
this is our like second second episode of our podcast series, Satotalk, and how this all happened with you was after the first one. I was looking for like interesting people to follow up on the first one, and I read your which one was that? I read the article about the pesticide or
Mm.
the propaganda, let's say, that's being spread about pesticide use in Vietnam on the tea
Mhm.
farms. And I thought that was very interesting because it's actually quite rare to in the year 2024. Blogs are not really such a thing anymore, at least in my
Mhm.
perception. People are so turning towards that short form content, um,
Yeah.
29 seconds, 1 minute, something like this, scrolling through their feeds, like all this. I mean, I don't have to. It's kind of like
Mhm.
everyone is exposed to it, everyone knows about it. And then I felt quite delighted, when I saw, oh, he's running a blog, and he's like actively running a blog, not just like,
Mhm.
okay, it sounds cool, I have a blog, and then you never write, you never post, you never put an effort, but
Mhm.
actually, like, you really, it's alive, and that was
Mhm.
for once what impressed me. And then yeah, just following your social media on Instagram, I thought like that's a cool guy, and he's really like into it, like especially from the technical side, I would say.
Mhm.
And then I also found that combination very interesting, of you being
If I
in
broke. Mhm.
Utah, which is not like really known for like tea, quite the opposite. So I thought that is interesting as well. And yeah, I like the nerdiness about like how you approach tea.
Mhm.
That's my introduction for you, and now if you could drop like a few sentences like about yourself and all
Yeah.
that, like that.
So I started drinking tea when I was about 16 or 17 years old. Um, it was kind of the way I was rebelling against my upbringing, because I was raised LDS, and in the LDS church, you're not supposed to drink tea. And I was like, hey, I want to try this. And so I got into it. I bought my first gaiwan at about 16 and started brewing a cheap Taiwanese Alishan oolong I found at a grocery store, which wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't good. And so initially I was somebody that was like, I don't get how people are into this. But then as I started drinking
Maybe it
more and
was
more,
maybe it was great, but at that time you couldn't comprehend.
yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, you never know because it was from a Whole Foods down here, so I don't know if theirs are the best, but it was good. It was enough that kind of sparked my interest to look into other types of tea and get involved in that. And then I discovered puers and everything, and really kind of fell in love with heicha in general.
Is it you come to LDS church, or is it something you don't want to on
What was that? Sorry.
comfortable about talking about like your
Yeah.
upbringing, the Mormon, because
Mhm.
for a lot of people, I think it's yeah, it's something they might be curious about, or like how is
Mhm.
life there, because they only maybe know it from YouTube channels. Or Shao, for
Mhm.
example, when I told her about it, I think you didn't know much about it. Can you give like a super quick like rundown how that is like growing up there?
So the LDS Church, and this is a very generalized oversimplification, so there are going to be things that are left out. But in essence, members of the LDS Church practice what they call the word of wisdom, which is kind of a set of guidelines for how you should live your life. And in it, it says hot drinks are not for the belly. So that includes teas and coffees. And so there's a lot of religious standards that you're expected to follow. And to their credit, the LDS Church does a lot of awesome things like charity work and donates a lot of money to preventing homelessness and helping people with disabilities get jobs. But from my perspective, growing up, raised LDS, it was kind of more of a environment where you're not supposed to question things. And if you start to question things, it's frowned upon and you're kind of ousted from the generalized society.
So when you started to go against the grain and question things, curious about tea, wanting to try this, that, or the other, what is like? How do you live that? Like, because I imagine it being a super big step out of that like community peer pressure, and then how do you kind of like have you coming out? You know, like, oh, actually, I like tea, or I drink tea, or I want to try. Like, how's that like family wise, friends wise? Because it's a very tightly knit community, as I understand it. So how did that go?
Yes. So my family, my immediate family, were totally okay with it. My dad actually sometimes joins me and drinks some tea, and my mom is very supportive of it as well. But there were some family members that were kind of against it. I have lost some friends kind of leaving that atmosphere where it's like it's not officially encouraged to not associate with people who aren't members, but it's kind of a thing that happens where you want to surround yourself with people who are still active in the church and practicing church policies and everything. And so for a lot of them, when I started drinking tea, it was very against those policies, and I was kind of shunned from that. I mean, my grandparents on my one side still kind of almost act like I'm dealing drugs whenever they see me drinking tea. They have that kind of reaction where it's like a very negative, visceral reaction, or they'll tell me, "Hey, you shouldn't be drinking these teas from China. They're going to have lead in them, and you're going to die." And I have to explain to them, no, that's not a concern. I drink the good stuff. Don't worry.
But on the other hand, I see it as, I mean, I imagine it's, now we're laughing and we make it sound like, oh, it's not a big deal. But like, I think I have enough compassion to understand that it's really, it's tough. Like when you really embed it in this kind of system, and you don't want to wear that mask. You want to be yourself, right? And you want to follow what you feel is right. So I think it's I can imagine, well, yeah, just imagine that it's like a really big deal. But my question for you is, could you also, on the flip side, did you see yourself as becoming sort of like a role model to showcase that, look, I can be like a great citizen of that community. I can be friends with everyone. I can be kind, and not even though I drink tea, but because I drink tea, because tea actually helps me to, I don't know, be calmer, you know, connect with nature more, like focus my thoughts and to channel my thoughts into like a really positive way, and then spread the word, or like, as I said, like be a role model and inspire other people. How do you see that? What are your thoughts on this?
I can definitely see that. I have educated a lot of my good friends on how, like, the health benefits of certain teas, you know, like when they're sick. I'm not somebody that really pushes for things like that because I like to go for more of the scientific side of things. But I do know that when I'm sick, there are certain teas I reach for, you know. So I'll use that as kind of a teaching moment and be like, hey, you're using this in the way that in the LDS scriptures, it says that God created all plants for humans' use, basically. And you're using it in a way that is intended to benefit you and help you. And so I'll tell them about these different things, and sometimes they'll even have me make them different types of tea. And so I kind of see that I have become sort of where the friends that are still around, or to the people that I meet and I tell them that I drink tea, they are a lot more open and accepting and willing to learn about it than initially. It's very much become where people respect that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to tea, and they trust me enough that they don't think I'm lying to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes total sense. add to this one? Otherwise, I want to jump into because Neldon just mentioned scientific, and that triggered something inside me. So,
a small question. It sounds like in your world, maybe you can easily separate to two type of people. One is people like you who question things, and the other type is they don't question things. And yeah, and I don't know if my understanding, if it's okay or right. And I want to ask you, how many percentage of people around you is they don't question things?
I would say it's probably maybe 7 out of 10 people don't question things. Because in the LDS church, one of my least favorite sayings that they have that they kind of teach you as a kid is doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith. And so you're very much you're taught to kind of question your questions before you ask your questions. And so I think for a lot of people out here, they do spend more time kind of not questioning things than opening their eyes and being like, hey, I should really ask, is this right for me?
but then that thing, actually, I think this phenomena that you describe, of course, is kind of like you stand there with how's that thing called in English? When you magnifying glass, like when it looks like it's like really condensed what you explain in where you live. But then I think it's really a global, well, maybe not problem, but global situation that we live in. That people don't really question. It's amplified where you are, but actually it's the same thing. Like no matter where you go, and to kind of like build the bridge or the link to tea. That is at least my observation, and that's why I explained to you on the phone like 2 weeks ago when we had our initial conversation, why we go for this our almost like a mission, what we're doing right now with the wild tea, wild farming tea, naturally farmed tea, focus on no pesticides and all this, and that's why it resonated when I read your article about pesticides. That people consume, it's not just about tea, it's about everything. Because they want comfort, they want to enjoy themselves, they want a feeling of happiness, right? And there's not much questioning going on. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about the US, if we talk about Europe, or if we talk about Asia, Taiwan. Basically, it's sort of like the human mind is just designed like this, that right? Like you want to have a good time and you want the least resistance. It's a logical, rational way of living. So I find that very respectable and very, very interesting to meet people like you who go against the grain, who say, well, this might not be the least resistance right now in this moment, but on the long run, I benefit in many different ways, health-wise. Tea elevates me, or tea cleanses my system, tea calms me down, and so on and so on. So I want to like branch out into a little bit more what you said earlier about the science, pesticides. What are your thoughts on it? Because I see so many people in the tea culture just drink random stuff, that sounds great. That is label has a great label in terms of like artwork. When we talk about puerh, the paper printing looks beautiful, all this, and I get it. But then, is it really what you want to put in your body? Like, what are your thoughts on this? Like the whole pesticide, fertilizer, and so on and so on and so on.
I think, and this is just something that I've noticed within the past 10 years or so since I've been drinking tea, is there's more of a push to be more conscious of what is in your tea. And we're starting to see more companies care about things like organic certification or having pesticide tests done on their products they're offering. Because I think people are starting to realize that they should be caring more about what they put in their body. And as far as it goes for me personally, I think it goes kind of both ways. I've gotten to the point where I can usually tell when there's pesticides still on the tea because you can kind of feel that, with like mouth feel and things like that, and how it makes your throat feel. Um, but I think for a lot of people,
Sorry
they
to
might.
interrupt, but go into this, please, more in
Okay,
detail.
yeah.
Like, how does it feel? Like,
So,
because I think it's super
so
interesting for people to pay attention on this. If you're not aware, then you will not. So.
yeah. So usually when I'm tasting a tea for the first time that I'm not certain if it has pesticides or not, I'll pay attention to the things like how my tongue's feeling, how the roof of my mouth is feeling, and if it feels like I've had like a cotton ball in there ripping my mouth up and taking all of the moisture out, or if my throat starts to feel tight and irritated or like scratchy almost, or if the tea makes me feel in a weird way almost more thirsty. If it's like because to me a lot of teas should be where they generate a lot of saliva and they make you want to drink more, but they shouldn't leave you feeling like you haven't drank water in 6 days. They shouldn't make you feel dehydrated or like you need a drink. And if I'm noticing things like that, plus the weird like kind of throat locking where your throat will kind of feel tight or it might feel a little bit scratchy, then to me that's a sign that there were pesticides in that tea that weren't necessarily taken care of.
How about fertilizer?
As far as fertilizer, I can't really determine that. I so I grew up in a farming community, and I understand that there are uses for these things, especially with intensive agriculture. But I think that there are more natural alternatives that they could be going towards. Like instead of using like bagged nitrogen from a different company, they could use like cow manure or something like that instead, where there's more natural alternatives. But I think it is something that is necessary to produce on a large scale. But if it's like a smaller operation, I don't see necessarily why they would need to use larger amounts that would be totally noticeable in the tea, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can you add something to from your point of view regarding pesticides when you drink conventional tea? How do you feel? How does it make you feel? Body and mind experience.
Because I do meditation, so if I drink tea with, let's say, contains chemical substance, then my first my body will feel the cheese block. Like for example, it goes maybe to here, and it couldn't go down. So my head will start to feel like swollen and feel very uncomfortable. And besides that, I have the same reaction like how you describe here, and my stomach is also very sensitive. Yeah, so and the whole body will feel like very tense, but it's in a very hidden, like hidden way. If you're not aware of yourself, then you will not feel it. Yeah.
Yep.
To me, it's. I even want to bring it like to. I know it's abstract for a lot of people, especially if they're not into meditation or any of this kind of thing, or that they see the body really. Are you still there? Oh, okay. Camera was just okay.
Sorry, that was weird.
Yeah. For me, it's really like it just in one word. I would say when I drink conventional tea, it just makes me nervous. I drink it and I get this immediate push, this hit of energy, really like a boost, but that very, very quickly turns into nervousness. And the release of flavor, of everything is just so instant that it overwhelms the system. And that is from my experience when a lot of people, they say, oh, I can't drink tea. And why can't you drink tea? It upsets my stomach. It makes me nervous. I can't sleep. And that is this misconception that people have. They think that is the tea plant. But actually, it's not really the tea plant. It is if you drink tea that hasn't been treated and harvested and grown in like a suitable fashion. That is what I think, because like the teas that we usually drink, it is a very, very, very different experience. Like the release of all the content is just so gentle and so smooth and very linear. Like you can steep it 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and you still have content. It's still thick. It doesn't taste like washed out. And it's a very gentle, beautiful journey. And it's the same, not just on your palate, in your mouth, but then actually when it goes into your body, it's exactly the same. Like it's a very slow build up of whatever sensation that cultivar or that tea creates in your body. And that's also how it leaves the body, like very smooth, and there's no abrupt, like you're not dragged into a certain direction. This is my experience. And I don't have your experience or Shao's experience regarding tea itself. I don't have this like technical, as high of an interest regarding the technical components. I focus more on like what does it do to my body? How does it feel? You know, so
Yeah,
kind of like a different angle.
Yeah, I totally understand that too, because that's one of the other things is when companies add flavorings or additives to certain teas, like Jinxuan, when they add artificial milk flavoring to really boost up that flavoring out here, uh, I don't mind it if it's done properly. If they do it in a way that enhances the tea but doesn't take away from it. There are certain ones that I've had though where it feels very much like you're drinking a stick of butter, and it makes your whole body feel sluggish and not very fun. But I know other people that really love that stuff because they love that it has such a strong flavor rather than the more subtle creaminess that Jinxuan usually has. If that
Yeah, I
makes sense.
think
It's like
that's a very good point. Actually, I think there should be choices, you know, and people, I mean, we're not talking about like crack, you know, so it shouldn't be regulated in that sense. So you could choose whatever you want to drink. If you feel like having this buttery experience, having additional flavoring, then that's totally fine, you know, and I think there should be shops and stores offering it. Where I see us, Shao and myself, in this whole thing with Sato Tea is a little bit challenging the giant, you know, kind of like challenging the industry, not pointing on them and saying, hey, you guys are bad, you're poisoning people, you're abusing tea in that sense. No, that's not the point, but more like giving people options and showing them there's small scale availability of a product that is not, I mean, we're not talking about like hundreds of dollars that you have to pay, you know. Of course it's more expensive because the work and everything is just so much more intense. The yield is just so much smaller. If you compare conventionally farmed tea, you have harvesting machines, right? Like you have a very streamlined workflow. And that is the thing. Like, let me jump into this one. That people have this, they see on Instagram, they see those beautiful farms, they see like an old Asian man, he stands there, you know, and then they create this romantic view of like, oh, that is so nice, that is so green, that is so clean, and that's what I'm drinking. But that's just not the truth, you know, and that is kind of like our point that we want to make. Let's at least be honest about it, you know. This is an industrial, like big scale operation, focus on profit. You know, it's no difference than, let's say, McDonald's or something. Everything is streamlined. It's a business. It's like sharply calculated. It's but it has this beautiful like label, you know, like, oh, it's tea. It's so green. It's so, but tons and tons of fertilizer, tons of pesticides, machinery, and so on and so on and so on. That is the reason why when you go to I don't know, like I'm not very familiar, but like those big websites where you can in the US, I think Y2T or something is like a big address, for example, why you can buy tea for, I don't know, $5, you know, and like naturally farmed or wild tea will cost you 15 or 20 or 30 or 40, you know, depending what you want to have. And I guess like that is, it sounds almost like I'm defending, but like that is really, it's something I carry really, like every day I think about it because I'm really tied to this, like with my heart, to show people there's a reason for this, you know, and there's a very, very big difference. And I just want people to try, at least try, you know, and then make an informed decision.
Yeah, and like from my experience, there is a massive difference between, like, you can tell in quality of like flavor, how long it lasts, how it makes your body feel in these more small organic teas rather than the ones that you can buy that are more mass produced and cheaper end, you know? And it's not to say that they're not necessarily bad teas, but I think in the West, and I actually did my graduate project for my bachelor's degree on this, a lot of Western tea culture is influenced by like Orientalism, where it's very much kind of almost a fetish in a way, where they see these things of, like you said, an old Asian man standing in front of some tea bushes, and they think, oh, this must be the best thing possible. Or they lean into the tea has like a 5,000 year history, and they lean into that and they're like, look, this is a product of history. This is why you should buy ours, without telling you that theirs is essentially more of a modern, mass produced kind of a from machine to cup tea, if that makes sense.
Super interesting. So what's your thought on, I don't want to say like disrupt or like, but how to create more awareness, to put it in like positive words, like how to help other people, because that's essentially what it is about, to help others to widen their horizon and then let them make their choice, whatever choice that might be. You know, maybe they walk away and say, I don't like it. I like that $5 tea because it gives me what I want. You know, that's totally fine. If you just want that quick experience, you need to pick the right tool for the job, right? You don't always like need to sit down for like 3 hours and have like a super expensive tea. Well, if you just want a tea, then, you know, so, but how to create more awareness from your perspective?
I think being more transparent and actually showing like the farms and the farmers is a great start, but even that can get a little gimmicky at times, where they're like, look, here's the farmer, you can trust this person, because maybe the tea they're selling you isn't from that farmer, and they're just saying, hey, here's the farmer. I think doing stuff like that and showing people the tea fields and showing them the harvesting and saying, hey, we're actually here, we've got this footage, this is the tea that you'll be drinking, and then showing them the difference and being like, here's a tea that you can buy at the supermarket, you know, without showing a brand. And you could show them the difference in the quality of like the leaves and how it looks different. And you could then explain the differences. Because I think a lot of people are really interested in seeing knowledge from people that are knowledgeable in the field and learning about these things. It just needs to be presented in a way that says, hey, I'm not judging you, but look, here's what I have. If that makes sense.
You're a very analytical person. Like, I can tell. Like, you have this very yeah, it's interesting. How do you bring this together with your job? Because just a little detour, because I think it's super worth mentioning that you're a curator in a museum, right? Like, how's that connected?
So a lot of my job, or a lot of what I've been doing, is more researching all of the items and creating signs so that people know exactly what each item is, when it's from, who made it, like what it is. And so I kind of tie it in that sense, where I like to be more in depth and I like to really look at it and see what's going on, and then presenting it in a way that's easy for everyone to understand rather than just the tea nerds, you know? So it's like, for me, I love antiques and I'm a nerd for antiques, but I know not everybody is going to know what an 1800s baby cradle is. And so I try and get the information through research and then present it in a way that everybody can understand, with like standardized formats or making videos or clips and things for them, things like that.
Very interesting. So I just come up with one question, which is, do you agree that people if they're used to drink conventional tea, and if you suddenly give them, oh, look, this is a wild tea or wild farming tea, and they suddenly drink it, they couldn't understand it because it takes time to recultivate, you know, a lot of things. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree there. I think that they might be like, oh, this is a good tea, but they couldn't necessarily tell the differences. They might enjoy the flavor more, but they're not going to be able to pick up on the more subtle notes, like, oh, look at this, it's got a nice floral flavor, and the sweetness is long lasting, and I can still smell it, you know, things like that. I think that if you give them a higher quality tea, then what they will do is they'll be like, oh, this is a good tea, thanks for sharing. but they won't necessarily be able to tell all of those more subtleties until they really taste everything and kind of get to learn these things.
You mentioned education a couple of times. Then how do you think, what would be like a feasible way of educating people towards like making different choices regarding tea?
I think kind of, well, not to be like that person that's bragging, but like doing kind of the stuff that I do, where it's more like presenting things in a way that's like, hey, look at this, here's the history behind it, but not being too over like, hey, look at this, I've got some cool stuff to show you. But you want to incorporate personality into it. You don't want to seem like you're just an encyclopedia, but you also don't want to see like you're like a YouTuber personality. You don't want to seem like overly exaggerated and fake. You want to make it so that you're true to yourself and you're producing content that's going to engage people and they can see, oh, this person's funny. Like with mine, I like to try and include jokes in mine or like things like that, funny language. Like I joked
or funny
in one of
music.
mine.
But
Yeah.
like a few days ago, I checked his Instagram, and in his story, usually he posts when he gets home after work. Some context for people who don't know you. When he gets home after work, he will brew a tea and then take one picture of the tea soup and then also like combine it with a song. And a few days ago, I listened. I was like, "What's that?" And it's like a German song because Neldon he speaks German. Yeah. So I was like, Schausele. I was like, ich habe mich kaputt gelacht. Yeah, I laughed very, very hard.
Yeah, I think that one was Wir haben den Winter überlebt.
Yeah. We survived
we had just
winter.
gotten over we just gotten over all this cold weather, and now it's like we're right back to it. So it was like, oh, it's nice and sunny today. The winter's over. It's the first day of spring. And then it's like, nope, right back to where it was.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. It will come back. Yeah. Yeah. Anything from any question? Anything that you would like to throw in? In this tricky situation.
I think a question I would have is more for you, kind of like what motivated you to kind of start this mission where you want to really help people understand the differences between more farmed and more traditional, in a sense, teas, if that makes sense.
Okay. For me, it really started from I saw how my body was transformed by the energy from the tea after maybe very fast 3 to 4 years. Like it's like I have second body. It just becomes so clean, so sensitive, and it helps me to it proves me it's a very, very beautiful medicine for our human body. And so in the beginning, I just feel like, okay, I want to share this energy to more people. And then while I'm sharing, I realize I see a bigger picture, which is, if I share those energy, then more people buy, the money will support the farmers, then they have more cash flow to maybe clean more land. Because in the past, somehow I feel like I take it for granted, like, oh yeah, this clean tea, But one day I really see that, no, it's not like, so easy. It's actually take a lot of efforts, and it needs someone, the farmers they insist on something. They don't just want to make money. Instead, they believe in certain philosophy. They connect to nature, and they want to really do something good to this wholeness. Yeah. So
Because they make a choice, right? Against the profit.
yeah. So so I have this cycle in my head. Me, people, farmers, land, and I want to create a very nice cycle and let it run, and eventually benefit for others, for the land, for you just also for ourselves, the body and spirit.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think, as like I've been able to interview a lot of different tea farmers for my different projects I've done on my blog. And that's one of the biggest things I've noticed is it's kind of sad how they get shorted a lot of times on profit from these, where they'll sell it for like $2, $3, $4 a kilogram for the raw leaf, and then a different person will go and then make $50 or $60 on that product. And so it's really nice that you're trying to incorporate them and be like, hey, let's make sure that they get more of this money, and it incentivizes them to then start doing more of these more conscious farming practices. So that's really awesome.
Our case, just to explain I don't like not like business first to speak in those terms. Like in our business model, there is no middleman. Like we really travel Taiwan in the last couple of years, like really sit on our motorbike, like really we have a small motorbike and we literally drive around Taiwan for hours, like through the mountains to reach those guys, and then spend a day or two with them, understand who they are, what's their philosophy, really see the land, see are the plants healthy, how big is your operation, what are your goals, why are you doing this, who's your family, like since when have you been doing this, and so on and so on and so on. Try all the different teas, and then see if we have in Chinese we have this word yuan fen, like if you have kind of like a connection between each other, and then we okay, that might be worth sharing with the world, and we buy from them directly, put it in our store, like do all the product photography, all this kind of stuff, right? Explain the story, the background, and then it's there for you to drink, so there is no middleman who takes a part, and still, of course, our tea is a little bit pricier, but it is already the lowest that's possible, like we don't live in a big house, we don't own much stuff, like for us it's really and just sharing, and the price that you see is what it really costs to create like pesticide fertilizer free tea on a small scale. That's so we're covering that, and to give, because you mentioned transparency, that's how we run our operation. And to answer your question before, I would also like to add from my perspective, because you said like what drives you, what's your motivation to do all this, to get up every day and to effort. And for me, it dates like years back when we were still living in Berlin together, and we both lived a very, very different life. Like we had a very comfortable apartment in Berlin, and I had a like very well-paying job in like management, real estate management. But I didn't have time to do like anything. I was like just working, coming home, making money, spending money. I felt like, what's that kind of life? What am I doing? Like I'm so disconnected from everything, working and just it doesn't have any purpose, and I just feel I'm more and more stressed, I'm more and more tired. I'm aging in like exponentially, I felt like I'm already 50, but I was 30, like my body condition, my mental condition, everything was like in decline. And then Xiao had this project for Taiwan where she was at that point still a copywriter, and she had to write about tea, and that's how we got in touch with it first. And we drank tea before work, and I felt like I'm drinking this, and I sit there, we listen to music before work, just like a few minutes, and I feel, wow, that makes me really, really quiet. Like it mutes all the voices, all the nervousness, all the stuff. It takes it away. I was so amazed by this. I thought, like, how is this possible that like a plant can create this? I felt, wow, you know, not in a numb way, but it gives you clarity. It opens your eyes to like completely new possibilities. And that's how the wheels started to spin. Like we did this every morning, then we did it on the weekend, then we did it basically every day until the day I decided to like really, it gave me the energy and the clarity to really change my path. And I quit my job. And we like went all in and said, okay, tea is what we want to do. We want to share this with more people. I started making music, connecting those things, and then eventually 1 year later we moved to Taiwan and like really dedicated ourselves to share this with people and bring it to the people. That's really like, that's the story basically.
That's awesome. To kind of add to that too, I think that's one of the things that still drives me is feeling that energy, you know, because it's fascinating to me how each tea, even though it's the same plant, you know, it's all Camellia sinensis, each tea can impact you very differently with the different feelings and how it impacts your body. Like, I know for me at least, one like Taiwanese oolong, like I might be drinking an Alishan one day and it might have me feel a little bit more energetic. And then I'll be drinking like a Shanlin Chi another day and it'll be a lot more calming. So it's just very interesting to notice how each tea has that sort of different feeling. And that's one of my favorite things about it is just how does each one make me feel?
Yeah, that's interesting. And a question that has been sitting with me for quite some while. I asked it Kevin in our first episode, and I want to ask you again. I'm still chasing the answer to the question why pu'er is so popular in the West. Because in Taiwan, it plays a minor role. And but I see like Instagram, it's like full, you know, of those like beautiful pu'er cakes. What's your take on this? What do you think?
I think there's two things here. I think number one, it's probably the pu'er bubble. I don't know if you've heard about that in China, where there was sort of
in like seeing it as an investment kind of like thing, inflating. Okay.
Yes, there was an oversaturation in the market of tea cakes at one point, to the point where prices would be significantly cheaper than they are today for certain things that are more valuable. And I think that possibly, and I would love to do more investigation on this, I think a lot of Chinese markets realized that. And so they started offloading their excess to the West with being like, oh, look, here's this. We have this Chinese product. And it really caught on. The other possibility is cigar and wine and coffee culture are huge here in the US. And I think people are able to kind of recognize similarities between pu'er and, say, coffee or wine culture, where it's like with wines, the older it gets, the more valuable and the more deep the flavors get. And so people start to think about, oh, wait, this is kind of similar to wine, where if I buy this, I have to keep it for years and years, and then it'll be completely different 10 years from now. And I think that really appealed to a lot of people is just the similarities between existing hobbies in the US and in the West in general.
There's Neldon the analyst again. we should create this job description, tea analyst.
Professional tea analyst, yeah. Because that's one of the things that does interest me a lot is the looking at the trends, because I was always a science nerd in school. I did science fair every year. I went to the International Science Fair one year. And so I love to approach things from that more analytical mindset where it's like, how can I explain these things? Why do I explain these things? But of course, with tea, it's kind of an interesting thing where I have to merge kind of the more analytical and philosophical aspects, where I have to focus on internal feelings and also more of the data and the raw side of things, if that makes sense.
It's a lot of fun. I'm checking time, 45 minutes. I don't want to stretch it out too long for the first one. Is there something you would like to, I don't know, spread, ask, add to kind of like round it up for our first conversation?
I think the one thing that I would like to say, and like this, I kind of like that you mentioned this too, you know, that there need to be options. One of the things that I love to talk about, and I try to mention in all of my posts, is don't criticize people for the way they enjoy their tea, and I think that in the West it comes off a lot of times. The people that are really into puerh can come across as like snobs, where it's like you can only brew this gong fu, you can only do it this way, and they don't recognize that a lot of tea is really personal, and it's to how you should be brewing it and how it feels with you and how you enjoy it. And so I love that you kind of mentioned that there need to be other options for people, aside from like if they want to buy the nicer, more organic stuff, or if they want to buy the conventional stuff. Because I think that's the big thing that people don't really realize is that there need to be these options, because at the end of the day, tea is a very personal thing and it should come down to what you enjoy.
Yeah, that's a great statement, and I totally agree with this. To add or to add some weight to this is like the most beautiful thing for me actually when we see old people on drinking tea and they have this very lazy approach of like like some set of like old tools, and it looks like, wow, did you wash them in the last like 2 years, and they just brew and just super laid back, talking to you at the same time and just brewing, and you drink it up and you have an expectation of like, okay, that can't be good, but then you drink it and so rich, and you can taste that person's personality, and it blows you away, and this is something that impresses me so much, and it adds weight to what you said, that actually it doesn't matter it doesn't matter what tools you have, it doesn't even matter what tea event. I think is what you feel in that moment. How does that make you feel? If it gives you happiness, if it makes you calm, if it makes you, if it opens your horizon to see the world with a little bit different eyes, throw up a question or whatever, then I think that
Sweet. Yeah, no, it's one of those things where I wish more people would kind of have that similar mindset where it is really just what it doesn't matter what you have or how you brew it, it matters how you feel.
and eventually, I mean, not even who you are, where you live, LDS church or not, this or that, all this like separation, all this limitations of
Mm. Yeah. Looks like the audio cut out there for a second. Can you hear me?
yeah. Are you?
Okay, there we
Does it
go.
work?
Yeah, it cut out for a second.
Yeah, I was about to say we're super happy that we made it happen, that we could get you on the show and talk to each other. For the audience, yesterday we were already sitting here at the same time, but because we're a little bit stupid, mixed up the time zones. For Neldon, it was still Sunday for in Utah and not in Taiwan. So, but yeah, we made it happen. I would.
What was that? Sorry, it cut out.
We could barely we could only like touch up on the some points, and we would love to follow up with this as a small teaser for the people listening. So maybe in a couple of weeks, we can go more in depth on like maybe 1 or 2 topics. If you're up for this, if you're interested.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. I'd love to do this again.
That's nice. That's nice. Anything you want to say? Your last words to Neldon before we say goodbye for now?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was super fun and enjoyable, and it's awesome getting to talk tea and sit here with you and discuss these things. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was really great. Thanks, and have a great have a great rest of your lazy Monday.
Hey, thank you. Have a great morning as well. Hopefully it goes well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye bye.